Hey guys, Kristi K here. So if you can't tell by what I'm wearing, today's tutorial is going to be how to make an awesome craft foam armored cuff for under $15. And that is actually the pair of cuffs for under $15, and that does include the buckles, the hot glue, and the foam. And you don't have to make the cuff exactly like I made it today. These are basic principles of how you can do it and how you can further your own potential to do more. But as you can see, it's a pretty cool cuff, and this is completely unpainted. There's no kind of finish on this cuff whatsoever. This is just straight from the tutorial today of how to construct it. So you don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to have Worbla or Wonderflex or Friendly Plastic or any of these other great things that we do love to use. This is, you're on a budget, you want to make some armor, you want to do something cool, and you want to do it cheap. So by all means, I will give you every possible tool to create exactly this. Alright guys, so the first step to making any kind of armored cuff is obviously getting the measurement. So in this case, it's going to be our forearm because it's a cuff. So we're going to take some cheap plastic wrap. Take the plastic wrap. Just kind of very loosely wrap it. You do have to think your foam is going to be a lot thicker than the plastic wrap. So you don't really care if it's super skin tight. In this case, it's the buff. And I'm just gonna mark right about wrist bone. And top of the arm, where I want the cuff to come to. And you do want to make sure you leave yourself enough room in your cuff that you can actually bend your elbow. There's been plenty of times that I've done the cuffs so high up on my forearm that by the end of the day it was like sticking in my skin. So I don't recommend that. And then I'm going to go and just flip my arm over and draw the straightest line I can of where my seam is going to be. Take my scissors. And as you can see, it's got that nice angled shape. Cutting along where my wrist bone line was. And then again the top of the forearm. Now that we got that super easy piece knocked out, take a piece of craft foam. Case, I'm using the 2mm thick foamy sheets, so it's literally kids craft foam. Nice and cheap. This cosplay doesn't have to be expensive. We tend to make it that way, but it didn't have to be. Take my splat. Now, some people center this. I choose not to because I use pretty much all my scraps. Find my Sharpie again. And again, I'm very loosely following that template because it is foam and I don't want it to turn out too small. Even though we can add more foam here in a little bit. Alright, so that's how quick it is to get your basic shape on foam, and then that way you're not stuck here you know, trying to use your measuring tape or anything like, oh, my forearm is, let's see how big at the top. All right, Alright, so it is. See, this is why you want to avoid this method right here. Alright, it's 9 1/4 inches. Yeah, you don't want to have to sit here and do that all the time. Alright, so now that we have our basic shape, if you wanted to, what you could do is take any kind of straight edge and you can come back in here and just clean up your lines. And I do like to use a silver Sharpie versus using a pen, because when you use a pen, it really, you know, presses the lines down into the foam, and if they're not necessarily lines that you want, then you don't necessarily want to use the pen. So I'm actually a pretty good straight line tracer, but cleaning it up. Now this you want to leave actually slightly arced, because again, your arm is curving. So a little bit of an arc, and that is good. And now that we have that, we can cut it out. So let's go ahead and design our wrist cuff. So now if you're like me and you're not very good at just coming up with the design out of your own head, there is a few easier ways to kind of trace a design that you can envision in your head. So let's say I know I want a whole bunch of scroll work and I'm gonna want some like diamond patterns, but again, I'm not very good at just, you know, like, oh, let me just freehand that right out of my brain. So in that case, you can take some translucent vellum paper. Forgive me if I say that wrong. Or if you have like artist tracer paper, any kind of like clearish paper, and then you can take, doesn't matter, iPad, computer, etc. And you're just going to Google scroll work, or, you know, geometric shapes, or even your favorite armor design from your favorite League of Legends character, say Janna. I don't know. Pick your favorite artwork for what you'd want to put onto your armor. If your character is very specific, the barbarian from Diablo 3, then, you know, obviously Google that character, and then I'm going to show you kind of that trace pattern technique here in a second. So I am actually a pretty big fan of this piece of scroll work, but boy, I would be sitting here for a while with you guys if I decided to do this. But again, you know, depending on what character you're doing, that you might have time to do that amount of scroll. So it's all in what you guys find, what you guys are looking for your character. I'm going to continue to look for a different scroll pattern for now. So I think I found one that I like, and you have to remember, I'm not doing all the details that are in the pattern, I'm just literally doing the shape that's kind of around it. So I think I'm going to go with this one for right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vellum paper and I'm going to stick it on top of the screen there, and I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to trace around it. So sorry I can't exactly show you guys that, but I'm going to do that real quick.
So all I do is half, and like I said, I just do the outlines.
because you're gonna come back in with like a wood burning tool, so any kind of burning tool to do some finer details here in a little bit. You could also use 3D paint, but for right now, just have half of your design, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut that out, flip it over, and trace it again. So, we'll do that. Make sure to save your image so you can come back and use it as a reference if you wanted to be able to do more details later. So as you can kind of see from the reference paper, I did zoom in enough to the image that it would fill up a good chunk of our cuff design here. And so like I said, that's a really easy way if you're not very great at just like, oh, I'm gonna come through, I'm gonna draw scroll work, I'm gonna draw geometric shapes, blah, blah, blah. So it's a little bit of a tracer method, but like I said, you can resize the image until you get it just the size that you actually want to for your cuff. A couple different ways to cut it out. You can use scissors or an Xacto knife, depending on, you know, how intricate your design pattern is. If it's extremely intricate, then I do recommend using an actual Xacto knife to be able to get in there and really do your details. Remember, if you are going to use an Xacto knife though, you need to put some kind of mat down, a scrap piece of cardboard, something that you don't mind cutting through. So in my case, I'm going to use my scissors. Taking a straight edge just to clean up my in-between line. So you can use whatever kind of straight edge you have. So this is my 1/2 of my scroll work, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along here and I'm going to make a kind of replica, if you will, of my basic armband, just to make sure I stay within my drawing lines. So same thing, going to move it kind of back over towards that edge. Now's where we get to play. Alright, so a couple methods to find center. We could obviously measure, or we could just fold. Since this is just our detail layer and it's not our base layer, it is okay if there is a little bit of a crump in it, because we can cover it with more details later. And you'll see what I mean by that. Center line, and I'm just kind of making it more obvious for you guys to see. Hopefully you can see it on camera right now. Alright, now is when I'm going to take my detail piece and I'm going to figure out where exactly do I want it to start. Do I want it to start lower? Do I want it to come up to the middle? You know, however I want to do it. And in this case, I think I actually want it to be off to the side. So how I'm going to do that is come back through, take my straight edge. In my case, it's an Omnigrip by Omnigrid And it's got a whole bunch of different angles, lines, and measurements already in it, so it's great. You can find it in any kind of craft store. So Joann Fabrics, Hobby Lobby, they should all have it. So I'm gonna put myself, I think, 1 inch off on each side of center. And I am actually going to keep it straight. So it's going to give me a 2-inch center gap between my design. And I'm going to come back through and add details in there, and you'll see why I'm doing that. So I think now that I have it off to the side, I think I'm going to go ahead and bring that half design down here. And the nice thing again about using a Sharpie, you don't need exact lines. You can practically just color in what you're gonna cut out. Okay, so after you have traced on your design from one side and then you've flipped it to mirror it on the other, you know, you're almost ready to cut it out, but you're gonna want a few more designs just to make sure that this is gonna fit with kind of your overall thought process before wasting too much time cutting it out. So my thought and theory is to put some kind of geometric shape and spikes down the center. So I have Googled a basic shape that I kind of really like, and I'm going to use this design and shape to create the fanned spikes out of it. So I am gonna have to make some modifications to this shape. You guys, you know, you can kind of do the same thing. Otherwise, you can kind of just start playing with different shapes and different designs that you personally like. But I'm gonna do a piece of that. And I've already kind of, you know, made sure that this is round about the size I need it to be to fit in that center. So, same concept. So as you can see, I connected some of the pieces compared to how they are in the design that I found on Google. And that's just going to allow me to kind of create more of a bend to get the spikes in, and I will show you how this is actually going to come together here in just a minute. Alright, so that can go back away. Since it is such a geometric design, you will want to come back in with your straight edge and try to clean up anything from your trace. Because obviously when you're tracing, you don't press too hard trying to get the lines perfectly straight because you don't want to scratch your screen. I do have a screen protector on my iPad, so I'm not going to hurt it too bad, but still don't want to press it too hard. Especially not with something that has such a fine tip on it. Now that I have that cleaned up, I'm going to come back through and I'm going to cut that out. Alright, so this is 1/2 of my spike design pattern. So now I'm going to get another piece of foam. Yes, foam galore. Okay, so now we're taking out more foam to create the spikes. So I'll take out yet another sheet. At least this is all foam, so it's pretty cheap. If you had to make each of these pieces out of Worbla, I think you would be counting the dollar signs as you went through and did it. I've got my 4 soon-to-be spiked pieces all drawn out.